growing up in New England. The title of his talk is Indians and Other Cousins, Thanksgiving Memories, and it is a personal family history. Our musician this morning is the always amazing Steven Skolberg. Our tech hosts are Carl Wittenberg as a Zoom wrangler and Monica Sasada on the camera, cinematographer extraordinaire. And we have a headphone available if anybody needs one for hearing enhancement. And of course, children are welcome in the sanctuary to play with Kim. And Kim, you don't have to sit back there if nobody shows up. We'd love to have you up here. We do have one announcement, perhaps two. I should say that Tuna reached out to me to make sure everybody knows that he is out of the hospital and appreciates any help that folks can offer in getting him to and from dialysis and perhaps with some meals. So putting that out there again. And also, tonight we begin our Maureen's Haven winter overnights for the homeless. We join with Temple Adas Israel to provide dinner for 25 people at the Bridgehampton Child Care Center. So if you're able to help out, please contact Mark or Carolyn Holstein. Katie Legare will be organizing our youngsters. Also, just a reminder, I don't know if anybody's on Zoom that needs to hear this, but the UU Choir is rehearsing this afternoon, right after service at noon. You can find more information about how to connect to events this week in your e-bulletin and on the events calendar on our website. If you have information you'd like to have announced to the congregation, please email our administrator by Tuesday of the week you would like it announced. And not seeing any visitors today. It's the home team. So we can do away with that language. Please take a moment now to greet your neighbor in person or in the chat if you haven't had a chance to yet. So. So I hope you didn't gate last night, did you?
No, it was the to and from Boston.
Oh, right. So
Sometimes we do one day.
Yeah.
Which is a lot, but it saves us a hotel.
Yeah. Yeah. Nice.
But it's not that bad. It's not as far.
Yeah, and the ferry's pleasant. It's always nice.
And if you go in the morning, the traffic is like.
Yeah, it flies on.
Yeah, it's amazing.
90, yeah. I can drive 90 with, or 80 rather with.
Yeah, 80.
Oops. Please be seated for Stephen's prelude. Vince Guaraldi. It was the holidays. So for our chalice lighting this morning, Mark is going to light the chalice with these words: "Come into this place of peace and let its silence heal your spirit. Come into this place of memory and let its history warm your soul. Come into this place of prophecy and power and let its vision change your heart." Please rise as you are willing and able to sing our first hymn, number 203 in the gray hymnal, "All Creatures of the Earth and Sky."
The history I'm about to describe occurred here on the East Coast 400 years ago. It was 200 years before the Trail of Tears and the horrific warfare of the Western Plains. When William Faulkner wrote, "The past is not dead, it has never even passed," he was right. This ancient time, 400 years ago, was a world that formed my family's cultural memories. Many of you know I was raised on a dairy farm in what was once a very rural town in western Connecticut. We supported ourselves with the help of 50 cows, 500 chickens, and an occasional pig. My Brooklyn-born wife tells me it was a cultural wasteland. I wouldn't know. But one thing is certain, we have plenty of space to form our own opinions about things. When my father walked in the woods, he insisted on silence. No singing, no hollering, no noisy footsteps scuffing the leaves. If we needed to say something, we pulled his sleeve and whispered. In his mind, he was walking in the steps of the northeastern woodland Indians, the Iroquois, the Cree, the Abenaki, and the Algonquin. Should he see a wild animal, a deer, a heron, occasionally a bear, he didn't point or wave his hands. He stood watching silently, expecting his children to follow his example. At the age of 6 or 7, I took an unusual train trip with him. Unusual because I almost never traveled anywhere without my mother and my 3 younger brothers. Unusual also because I sensed something of grave importance, whether it was in his voice, his clothing, he was dressed clean but informal, or in the serious intent of his instructions to me to stand straight, listen carefully, speak when I was asked to speak, which meant, of course, speak only when asked to speak. We got off the train at a whistle stop named for the man who lived there, Sabattis. Mitchell Sabattis was a full-blooded Abenaki Indian, the last of the Adirondack Guides, a man who had taught my father and his father to hunt deer. I remember only that it was a solemn occasion. No loud greetings, no laughter, no exuberant stories. If either of them smiled, I don't remember it. I do remember shaking the old man's hand. For my father, it was a passing of the torch. My fingers barely spanned the Indian's large, rough palm. This respect for the Northeastern Indians was as much a part of my family culture as washing my face in the morning. My father learned it from his father, my grandfather, who lived a boy's life in the Adirondack wilderness. But the respect began many generations before either of them. You know, the Pilgrims survived their first year in North America when they found their way to an abandoned Indian village, Patuxet, which smallpox had destroyed 3 years before they arrived. Here they found graves, unburied skeletons, caches of American corn, which they ate and used as seeds the following spring. In the second year, a chief of the Wampanoags, Massasoit, befriended them, hoping to gain an ally against his enemies, the Narragansetts. It was Massasoit who celebrated the first Thanksgiving with them, a time for the Pilgrims to thank their God for their survival and for the Wampanoags to honor their new military alliance. But from the beginning, all was not well in the new relationship. Before the Pilgrims had even set sail from the Netherlands, European diseases like measles and smallpox had begun to reduce the native population of New England from an estimated 90,000 people to little more than 10,000 in only 60 years. Along with the new diseases came new conflict. My ancestors arrived during, or some of my ancestors, arrived during a movement in the 1630s called the Great Migration. As the English population grew, their livestock, cows, hogs, and goats, would raid Indian gardens because the Indians didn't know anything about fences or didn't use fences. The English used liquor to pay for the damages and to purchase labor and land. Indian chiefs sold land they did not own or which was in dispute with other tribes. The English expect Indians who live nearby to submit to their laws, which the Wampanoags did not understand. In an attempt to resist the settlers, Massasoit's youngest son, who the English named Philip, created an alliance with the Narragansetts and other New England tribes. This began King Philip's War. It's a war that's never taught in our history, typically in classrooms here. It was the deadliest war ever fought in North America. 52 English towns were attacked, a dozen were destroyed, including Springfield and Providence. More than 2,500 colonists died. These were 30% of the English population of New England. The people of Boston felt their God had deserted them. On one side of my family, the Indians attacked and attempted to burn the fortified homes of Joseph and Thomas Rice in Sudbury, Mass. On another side, John Potter from Ipswich joined a militia to attack the Narragansetts. Now, if Philip had truly been able to unite the Indian tribes of the Northeast, I would not be the one standing here telling the story. The Mohawks, traditional enemies of the Algonquin tribes, attacked Philip near Troy, New York, killing 500 of his warriors. As it was, the tribes who did join his alliance never recovered. Those who were not killed outright were sent to Bermuda and the West Indies as slaves. This brutal war, and an earlier war with the Connecticut Pequots, opened all of New England to colonial settlement. 30 years later, in 1704, a band of Mohawks, now allied with the French, attacked a group of English boys who were treading flax in Sudbury. It was the practice of the Mohawks and the other Iroquoian tribes to engage in what they called mourning wars, to avenge their losses from warfare and disease, and while kidnapping youngsters to replace the people they had lost. They took 4 of the boys as captives back to their village west of Albany. The English parents ransomed 2 of them, but Timothy Rice and his brother refused to return. The chief who captured Timothy adopted him, and 20 years later, he became a chief of the tribe himself. Oddly, and not by accident, my youngest brother is named Timothy. During the French and Indian Wars, which went on sporadically, 1704 was part of that, until 1763, the Iroquois frequently captured children from English settlers to replace family members they had lost. The author of a book titled The Unredeemed Captive found that 30% of these captive children refused to return to their parents. For myself, as the oldest son of a dairy farmer descended from these Puritans, I can well understand how the English children might have decided to remain with their adoptive Indian parents, because the Indians just really honored their children until they got to about the age of 7 and they were expected to act as adults. In 1743, another cousin of the Rice family, Moses Rice, purchased a large tract of land in Charlemont, Massachusetts, in return for establishing a fort and settlement on the Mohawk Trail, which the Iroquois had used for centuries to attack the Algonquins of the Connecticut Valley and eastern Massachusetts. This did not go well for Moses. In 1752, a band of Mohawks scalped and killed him while he was working a field above the fort. I tell you this partly because Samuel Potter, an ancestor of mine, moved to Charlemont and married a Moses Rice granddaughter. But I tell this story also to describe the intimate connection the New England colonists shared with the woodland Indians of the Northeast for 150 years. For the Native Americans, the relationship was a disaster. The most recent research suggests that European diseases destroyed 90% of their population. The diseases that killed them were the diseases of a farming culture: measles, smallpox, chickenpox, typhus. And also, when you caught these diseases as a child, as an infant or a youngster, you were immune to them for a lifetime. But if you caught them as an adult, most of these, they would very likely kill you. From the early 1600s to our Revolutionary War, entire tribes disappeared from the Northeast. We see them now remembered best in our place names: Agawam, Montauk, Housatonic, Poxabog, Connecticut, Narragansett, Oromog. The list goes on and on. It is impossible for us to imagine the calamity these diseases brought to the native people of the Americas. COVID does not even come close. Even the bubonic plague of the Middle Ages killed a smaller percentage of the European population. Ironically, this was not the only time migrating farmers overwhelmed the population of hunters and gatherers. The most recent DNA analysis shows that early in the Neolithic period, 7,000 years ago, Farmers migrating into Western Europe from Anatolia and Turkey, close to Crimea, largely replaced the ancient native population of European hunters and gatherers. Apparently, some of us are not even who we thought we were. When Europeans first arrived on these shores, the native people were thriving with only stone tools. They willingly shared their knowledge of corn, tomatoes, beans, bark, berries, and wild animals, while quickly adopting the axes, knives, beaver traps, and of course, muskets. They were a proud, powerful people. If not for the diseases that arrived with us, the history of North America would have been quite different. By the mid-1800s, when my mother's family arrived from Sweden and another grandmother arrived from Scotland, the last of the northeastern Indians had been driven into the reservations we know now. Yet somehow the deep respect for their ancient culture and for their knowledge of the wild places around us has lived on in my father's family for 400 years. How do we offer thanks to a people who unwillingly and bitterly lost their land and their way of life to our ancestors? Thanksgiving doesn't seem to do it. To me, it seems fitting that we acknowledge the sacrifice and sit with it for a few minutes of silence. Not in pity, because they would not have wanted our pity. Not in sorrow, because the sorrow was theirs, but in deep respect. So now please rise as you are able to sing hymn number 360, Here We Have Gathered.
we support the work of this congregation through the gift of our time, our talents, and our treasure. So many of us here do many other things outside of the worship, and we really appreciate all the effort that goes into making this place work. Your financial contributions help to support the ongoing work of this congregation, including worship, religious exploration, and community care and connection. And your generosity is reflected in the ways that we are able to show up in our community for justice and service. Our Helping Hands Fund provides support to local organizations, and our Minister's Discretionary Fund provides support to individuals in immediate need. To contribute, you can use the baskets that will circulate shortly, or you can also use the link in your chat online or scan the QR code in your order of service. So Stephen will play an offertory song. We hold this time to share joys and sorrows and concerns of our heart. For those of you here in the meeting house, if you want to speak, please state your name and be brief so that all have time to share. And if you're online, please raise your hand or indicate to Carl that you would like to share. And again, please be brief, and we'll unmute you and spotlight your video.
Thanksgiving. Martha and I had our second son and his wife made Thanksgiving for us, and it was a great experience. And it's a time for friends and family. There's no getting around it. Whether our families arrived on these shores last year or in the 1840s, like my mother's family, or the 1890s, like my wife's family, or the 1630s, like my father's family, or whether you carry the blood of the people who first discovered this American Eden. Thanksgiving is a time for feast. In my childhood, mostly in the 50s and 60s, it was a time with aunts, uncles, cousins, brothers, sisters, grandparents. We dressed for this in uncomfortable suits, and there were plenty of hugs and kisses. But it was the food that carried the family's love. And remember, guys, back then it was the dark ages, when sisters, aunts, and mothers did all the cooking, all the magic in the kitchen. Turkeys, pies, puddings, vegetables of all shapes and colors. It was a joy for a hungry boy. In my mother's households, most meals were some variation of beef, flour, milk, or eggs. So on Thanksgiving Day, when she made her plum pudding with hard sauce, I was in ecstasy. That hard sauce, I remember it. It was sugar, 90% sugar, with a hint of bourbon, condensed to the consistency of butter. The plum pudding was just an add-on. But we want to hear from the rest of you. What was your favorite Thanksgiving treat or maybe memory? So maybe Kent can bring the mic around to everybody, and Zoomers can raise their hand when they're ready to share.
I don't know if people make stuffing in the turkey anymore, but my grandmother did an amazing job of that. Chopped sausage and bread and I think her Thanksgiving was so popular she had 2 turkeys one year. I don't know how many people were there, but that was something we had to have 2 turkeys to celebrate.
Hi, I come from a family of Italian descent, so we always start out Thanksgiving dinner with lasagna, and then we have a full turkey dinner. And we had 2 of our kids and some in-laws and lots of grandkids over the other day, and we still had lasagna and a full turkey dinner.
I actually have some memories from the 50s. We used to go out to this chain called White Turkey, where they gave out white turkey pins. So this was a clear memory, but obviously my mother was boycotting having to cook because I don't have many memories of Thanksgiving dinner in a sort of en famille, as they say. I mean, I think we went out.
As many of you know, of course, I grew up in England. We didn't celebrating Thanksgiving, but we did celebrate Harvest Festival, which was a similar holiday. And my very favorite was the old-fashioned fruit cake. I always loved fruit cake, and my mother made her own, as well as her own English plum puddings for Christmas and the Christmas cake. And it wasn't a sponge cake, it was a solid fruit cake.
Well, every Thanksgiving these days, I spatchcock a turkey, which I learned to do from Mark Bittman of the Times, so you can actually have a turkey that's tender all over, and at least it's not just the women of the house cooking the food, so things have improved a bit. Spatchcocking, it's also called butterflying. It's just you flatten it. You actually saw out the backbone, and Mark, I'm not squeamish about it. I can do it. You just saw out the backbone, and then you spread it flat, and it's a flattened turkey.
Well, when I first met Mark and we went to Connecticut for Thanksgiving, Mark kept on making these mashed potatoes with marshmallows on top. And I thought they were awful. and so I refused to make them. But this year, I kept on, I was telling friends, now my husband used to make these sweet potatoes with marshmallows, and every single one of them had memories of sweet potatoes and marshmallows. So I guess it was a traditional Thanksgiving dish that I never knew.
I had sweet potatoes and marshmallows. My fondest memories are actually not about the food, but the company. In the beginning of the Korean War, my father was overseas. He was a reserve officer, and before we could join him there, we lived with my uncle, my aunt, their 4 children, my mother, my brother, and I in a 3-bedroom house in Fort Wayne, Indiana. And we would have Thanksgiving dinner with turkey, all the vegetables, mashed potatoes. And by the time everyone was served, we were looking for seconds, and my uncle hadn't eaten yet.
Any folks on Zoom care to share? Tina, can you unmute yourself?
I was just saying hello. No, I'm fine.
Okay.
Just leave.
Okay, great. Thanks, everybody. It's wonderful. Please rise as you feel willing or able to sing hymn number 168, One More Step, and then remain standing for Kent's benediction when we finish the hymn. Please remain standing for our benediction. These are words from the Lakota spiritual leader Black Elk, who fought as a 12-year-old in the Battle of the Little Bighorn, survived the Wounded Knee Massacre, and died in 1950. Hear me, 4/4 of the world, a relative I am. Give us the strength to walk the soft earth. Give us the eyes to see and the strength to understand. All over the earth, the faces of living things are alike. With tenderness have these come up out of the ground. Look upon these faces of children without number and with children in their arms, that they may face the winds and walk the good road to the day of quiet. This is our prayer. Hear me. Please join me in reading the words for extinguishing the chalice in your order of service. We extinguish this flame, but not the light of truth, the warmth of community, or the fire of commitment. These we carry in our hearts until we are together again. Please be seated for Stephen's postlude.